Joining me on stage is Rory Mullen, who is Vice President in the IDA Ireland's Life Science sector. Rory, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Ireland has been a drug manufacturing hub for decades, specifically small molecules in the early days, but it's kind of moving into, well, it already has moved into the biomanufacturing space, but how did Ireland come about for being such a centre for manufacturing?
Well, traditionally, as you say, it was in the small molecule area. I suppose Ireland really only industrialised in the 1950s to 1960s, and we've a large part of that our economic development strategy was to try and attract new and exciting companies to Ireland. So we've been very successful in the technology space and in the life sciences space, particularly in the Biopharma. As you say, we've been a traditional API manufacturer. Most of Big Pharma had API manufacturing. Some of them also had drug product sites in Ireland. And Pfizer have been there over 50 years. Many of the big companies have multiple sites. So when the industry as a whole started to, as biotechnology, I suppose 25 years ago, as biotechnology became a larger part of the industry, we very specifically set out to target that industry and to ensure that we had the infrastructure and the skills available to be attractive in that area. So our first big win was really Wyeth, who built a very large site in Grange Castle outside of Dublin. And after that, we set up, as a country, we set up the National Institute for Bioresearch and Training, NIBRT for short, which specifically trains people and produces people with skills for the industry. So when Pfizer purchased Wyeth and sites, the former Pfizer biotech sites in Ireland became available. BioMarin purchased the drug substance facility in Shan Valley in 2011. Amgen purchased a drug product site in Pottery Road in Dunleary, just outside Dublin. And the industry has really developed from there. We have, I think it's almost 10 billion of announced investment in the last decade. BMS are just finishing out their drug product site in Dublin. We have Shire are just starting to build their large drug substance facility in County Meath outside of Dublin. We've just even in this year to date, we've won our first large bio investment from Asia with Wuxi, announcing the development of a drug substance facility in Dundalk, about 50 kilometres north of Dublin. So really the industry has been going from strength to strength.
So a few years ago when they had the patent cliff issues going on, I think there were a couple of Irish facilities that ended up closing their doors. But have you seen those sort of closures displaced by the number of new facilities in the biologics space instead? We certainly have. We divide as an organisation. We divide it into three main areas. We've small molecule manufacturing, large molecule manufacturing, and the services side. So actually, of the three of those, the services side is growing most quickly. Novartis, when they went to a global business services model, they earmarked Dublin for one of their sites. They've now over 800 people supporting their commercial marketing and sales organisations in Europe. We have seen, as I talked about, huge growth in the biologics manufacturing, both the drug substance and the drug product. And I suppose we've held on to the small molecule sites for longer than we were worried, I suppose, 5 to 10 years ago about the patent cliff and what that was going to do to our industry. But two things. One, a lot of the sites, even as the generic competitors have come about, a lot of companies have maintained sales of their branded products and have maintained, and a large part of that is the quality that they can offer to consumers in that branded product, that consumers still want to buy it. So Ireland's quality reputation in manufacturing, I think, is unparalleled. So we've maintained a lot of those sites. And the ones that we've lost, a lot of them have been repurposed for biologics. So earlier this year, MSD announced a drug substance facility. It was in a site of a former API facility in Dublin. SK Biotech
took BMS's API plant and are developing their CDMO operation there. So we've seen a lot of the sites, even small molecule to small molecule, the former MSD site in Rathdrum, County Wicklow. The Wedges have taken it on as their first dedicated API facility for their veterinary products. So we've maintained our small molecule industry and added on top of that the biologics and the services.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the MSD sites there, repurposing for a biologics facility. I think when it was originally announced, MSD were going to shut the doors there and close down. But the fact that they were actually able to repurpose and keep the facility going, but for the next generation products, is quite an achievement. But how? I imagine it's not that easy to shift from a work stance from small molecules to large molecules. Now, you mentioned NIBRT, but how else does the Irish government support training and upskilling of workers in this industry?
I think as a country, we have a national. The biotech industry, in particular, is recognised as a key industry. We have a group for future skills need, which brings across all elements of the government to ensure.
Sorry, I'm just going to move this forward.
We have a group for future skills needs, which brings together all elements of government policy to ensure that we have the right type of people coming through, from the plain graduates to retraining. And NIBRT has some very successful programs which companies use, but which individuals have used to reskill if they have come from a small molecule background, to reskill and to move into the biologics area, because although there is a different skill set required, a lot of the same attributes for the type of people that you want are similar. So NIBRT is one part of it, but we work with all of the colleges and the institutes of technology across Ireland to ensure that the needs on last estimate, we're over the next 5 to 8 years, we estimate a further 10,000 manufacturing jobs in biotech, and we're ensuring that all of the instruments of the state are ensuring that pipeline is filled.
So really, you've got full government support there as far as the workforce goes, and as far as sort of the mindset goes to continue the large presence of biopharmaceuticals in Ireland. However, I've got to mention the low tax rate. This has to be a factor contributing to the volume of biopharma investment from multinationals, no?
Oh, absolutely. And we as I said, we industrialized late. We are an island off the coast of Europe, and foreign direct investment has always been something that we've been seeking to attract, and we make no bones, we ensure that we have a very competitive tax rate. And regardless of what happens at the OECD level with the US, we will always ensure, because we need to have a competitive tax rate, combined with an excellent operating environment and the availability of the people. And that certainly is a large part of our value proposition. And that's why we're pleased, I suppose, with the announcements this year. We've been heavily involved with the OECD, proactively engaged with them on their base erosion and profit sharing, the BEPS initiative, to ensure that the Irish taxation regime, whilst competitive, is fully OECD compliant. We welcome the fact that President Trump has reformed the US tax regime to make the US more competitive in that regard, because our biggest source of foreign investment is the US looking to international markets, and successful US companies are the more successful US companies are, the better it is for us. It will make it more difficult to compete. I think we're seeing on site selection projects now, we're seeing the US maybe feature where it didn't really before. So we're going to have to sharpen our pencil to ensure that we can compete. But I think for international manufacturing plants, as the SK Biotech, the Wuxi announcement, the Merck Sharp and Dome, which were all announced post President Trump's reforms, I think they demonstrate that we still are competitive, and tax is a part of the value proposition, but it is only part, and it is that business-friendly environment, availability of people where the head of manufacturing, the head of tech and the heads of quality are very, very happy to establish an operation.
I mean, you completely preempted my question there about the US tax changes, but I mean, it was a bit touch and go, I guess, last year while it was going through Congress. I think a couple of big pharma firms seemed to hold back on promises of investment and have since gone through. But going forward with these tax changes in the US, you must be a little bit nervous. Lilly and Amgen, they've promised to repatriate a whole load of foreign money into US investments, which, they could have been Irish investments.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of financial restructuring, and there's going to be IP and the royalties associated with it moving around the world. But Ireland has never proactively sought has never gone after tax revenue. What we have always sought as a country to do is to attract substantial investment to Ireland and to create those jobs, so that with the reforms, it will make it a more competitive environment. I think, as I mentioned already, I think when we a lot of the time we would, for the international business, we'd be competing with Switzerland, we'd be competing with Singapore. We're seeing various US states come into the mix as well, and I think there will be more. I think those reforms there will be more manufacturing investment in the US, but the biopharmaceutical market is growing so rapidly, and there still is such a there are constraint issues with capacity. I think there will also be business in Ireland. I think because the pie is continuing to grow, I think there will be more investment in the US, but I think will continue to win our share as well. And even just to build out as I said, the Shire facility, the MSD facility, Regeneron are continuing to grow in Limerick, are now up to 800 people within 4 years in a city where there really wasn't any biotech investment before. So I think we are going to continue to see growth.
That was a former computer site, wasn't it?
That was a former Dell assembly plant for Dell PCs, and they essentially built a box within a box. But the site was there. It was a fully serviced site. So it's an example of how I think the Irish economy has continued to change and morph. But it really is where we do well, is where companies are making a decision from first principles. They're looking at sites and they're saying, where is the best place globally to do this? Where it doesn't have to be very close to a particular market, that it's going to service many markets. And we tend to do well because Google, on the tech side, Google have about 5,000 people now in Dublin. So as you can imagine, when they were doing their due diligence, they developed a rather complex algorithm to decide where they were going to set up in Europe. And thankfully Ireland came out on top. For us, luckily enough, the person in charge of that project was Sheryl Sandberg, so when she moved to Facebook, it was a no-brainer. Then Facebook had now over 2,000 people in Ireland, their largest site outside of Menlo Park. So we're seeing industry in the two core areas in which we operate, the life sciences and the technology, where we really are seeing continued growth. And Ireland was very severely hit 10 years ago when in the global recession at that time, and really it's been our partners, particularly the US companies, that have helped us out of that recession, and we have seen we've been the fastest growing economy in Europe for 5 years in a row now.
Talking of Europe, Ireland is viewed as a gateway for multinational pharma companies to enter the EU. It's an English-speaking country. It's also got the manufacturing heritage. But on the other side of the Irish Sea, you've got the UK and Brexit. From Ireland and the IDA's point of view, is Brexit going to bring new opportunities for yourself?
The UK is our closest ally and our biggest partner in Europe, and we are very, very sorry to see them leave the European Union. On most issues, we are on the same side of the table as the UK, and we would very much prefer if they would reconsider their decision and remain an integral part of perhaps a reformed EU. But that being said, I think it will provide some opportunities for Ireland, and where that is the case, as obviously the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, has to relocate, and we competed very strongly for that. They're moving to Amsterdam, but I think we did compete strongly for that. And there will be opportunities like that where we will seek to compete. We have seen a lot of the UK-centric service providers, CDMOs and packagers. There's been announced investments from PCI Services in Drogheda, Almac, the large Northern Ireland CDMO, which is obviously part of the UK, have opened a sister site now in Dundalk, south of the border. Wasdell, one of the largest independent secondary packagers, again, who are UK centric, are now opening a site in Ireland. So it has, on the pharma side and in the financial services, those regulated industries where companies need absolute certainty as to their capability to provide services across the EU. We've seen opportunities there. So. As I said, hopefully it will be the softest Brexit possible, because the UK is our largest source of tourism. It's very strong for our agriculture and food sector. So our challenge is to remain as close allies as we have with the common travel area with the UK, but also remain an integral part of Europe.
So the UK's loss is to an extent Ireland's gain here.
There will be some opportunities there, certainly. And as I said, although they are our closest ally, we are going to chase those opportunities.
I think I've got time for one last quick question. Well, we'll see how quick it is. I'm just thinking about further investments in Ireland. You've kind of got the large-scale biologics going on, but has there been any sort of next-generation personalised medicines investments in Ireland at all, or is it really just commercial?
Takeda, who have an operation in Ireland, have announced a regenerative medicine project, which is really the first project of that type that we have won. We are, as we did with biologics 20 years ago, we are working we have been in discussion with all of the main gene and cell therapy companies. A lot of them have been purchased by our large investors who have operations in Ireland, but I think all of them are still trying to, where we've been successful really is in the commercial manufacturing. And these companies, a lot of them are only developing their clinical facilities at this time, generally close to wherever they're headquartered. And I think we will be well positioned as these products become more commercial. But I think the exact nature of what that supply chain is going to look like, and how those more personalised products, how that is going to be managed on a pan-European basis, we're certainly keeping very close to and hope to have a very attractive value proposition when it becomes clear how it's going to operate.
I suppose these medicines are so dependent on the logistics sometimes that it might be to the disadvantage of Ireland, being an island and all.
It could. We have a very strong. We have the Dublin airport is one of the busiest in Europe. We've connections to all European flights. But I think, as I said, it isn't really clear. Is there going to be, our facility is going to have to be that close to the patients? Are there going to be multiple sites across the larger countries? Or is there going to be some sort of secret sauce that is going to be supplied out to, is there going to be some sort of centralised hub and spoke sort of operation? So I think depending on how it goes out, it will determine how relevant it will be for us.
Yeah, I suppose it's just a bit too early to say.
It is, yeah, but we're certainly monitoring.
Well, Rory, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining me.
You're very welcome.
And yeah, I look forward to hearing more about investments in Ireland.
Very good.
And once again, there is a small window if anyone does have any urgent questions. No? Well, Rory, thanks again.
Thank you.